Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is kind of a global resize for everything, and this turned out to be a little bit more complicated than I could possibly have imagined. My original idea was that the property list just basically on a per level basis have a just a resize variable, so essentially all you would have to do would be after you'd set up the world, so anywhere kind of like down here, what you could do would be say something like my world dot x scale equals 0.5 and my world dot y scale equals 0.5, and you'll see if we were to test this out that it is gonna you will see a difference. It's gonna take that entire world and it's gonna bump it down. So now when we publish this, you'll see exactly this right here. So now we're getting the entire board that was of course sized up originally for the iPad, and here's our little guy walking around, and whoa, what's going on there? Where are you going? Huh, that was the first little thing I noticed. And then check this out too. He'll get pretty close to this guy and then connect with him. All right, so what's going on here? Our physics surrounding the bodies is what it originally was, and so is the border too. Okay, so you go out about this much over here and the same thing occurs. And the ways of dealing with that would be to, well, basically create some sort of global scale variable, make my world equal to that, so it could be 0.5 for example, and then we would have to go and account for it in things like this. All right, so where we create offset variables for not only the debug path but also for the edge loops for the world itself. Same thing would be true with all of our anything that's physics related. We'd have to go and apply that variable to it. An easier way would be to just shrink down the entire scene. All right, so what I did was I came over here to our game data .plist, and outside of the levels, I created a global resize variable for both the pad and the phone. And if you have this set at 1, it's going to be at 100%, and you'd think at 0.5 it would be at 50%, what we just saw essentially, but it's actually going to be the opposite of that. So it's going to be, if you had this at 2 and 2, or of course you could just have it 2 and 1, whatever you want, and they can be decimal values as well, but the point is your range is probably realistically going to be somewhere between 1 and 2, and the way this will look now is, well, if I publish it again, of course I took out that that variable in the level class, at least I hope I just did. It should look about the same, but here we go. Now go up here and say hello to this guy, doink, that's working fine, and our boundaries and everything like that is all working perfectly, and our debug paths, all that stuff is right there as well. So that worked well, and here is the secret sauce that made it happen. Over here in the view controller, oddly enough, we haven't talked about this, but I brought in the property list values as usual. I set up a float variable called global resize pad, global resize phone, and again I just checked to make sure that that didn't equal nil, because if it does equal nil, I want that just to revert back to being 1 again. And of course, a float variable with no value is going to just be 0. Alternatively, I guess I could have just put equals 1 over here, but that's all right. And then otherwise, you are going to use the float value from the property list, and the same thing is true over here. So just put a little note, phone resize, and iPad resize, and let's say a good range is 1 to 2, but you could put in there a 0.5. Oddly enough, it'll just make things look bigger. And come down here, so we've got now a new CG size variable called new size, and what that's doing is it's replacing what was previously in here, which was just skView.bounds dot size, I think, yeah. That's what was previously in there. So what I did was I took a new size and I just made that equal to skview.bounds.size.width times the global resize for the phone, or if you're on the phone, right, like they're right there. And if you're not, then you're on the iPad, so you use global resize pad, and then we just once that's established, we just replace it back in here with this. So it ends up, I guess in essence, doubling the size, but because your scale mode is set to mode aspect fill, well, you see how it looks. It gives us this nice little kind of pulled back view on everything. And when you transition through your scenes, they still retain this the aspect fill, or whatever we're gonna call this tricky little workaround. And it definitely solves a lot of problems in kind of one swoop versus having to go and account for that in every single one of our possible classes that dealt with physics. And there you have it. So by default, I'm just going to leave this set 1 and 1, and then for the levels, I've gone over here and just put in the check for different phone locations on all of the levels I have. Of course, these are all just basically clones of each other, but I'm going to leave that set to no. And then for characters, just keep in mind that if you do want that start location in here, you can use it, but again, I'm probably just going to set these all back to 0 and 0 for, or I'll just match them up to what the iPad location is, because just in general, I think you can get away, at least in this particular type of game, top view, everything is kind of working out of a central spot. You can get away with using the same locations for both devices. Okay. That's it for this video.